So here's a project that has just 2 files. This project has index.js, and it looks like, if I read the package, that it was counting on a library called Chalk and also a library called Chalk Animation. And so in order to run this, let me see, I have an index file and a package.json file. So I'm guessing if I tried to run just index.js that I'm going to get an error. And the error makes sense because I don't have these dependencies installed. And so there could have been, we certainly could have asked this programmer to provide all of the dependency files. So when you send this to me, or if I download it from your GitHub account perhaps, include all of those node module files, all those dependency files, which would be pretty huge and kind of pointless because the program or node should be able to install those. So I could go into the package.json and try and figure out what packages I need to manually install, but that seems kind of cumbersome. So it turns out that we can, if we have the package.json file, the package.json's job is to keep track of all of those dependencies that this project requires in order to be operational. And so I can pass along just the files that will change, in other words, my source code, and by doing npm install, as long as the package.json is included in this folder, which it seems to be, the npm install is going to look into the package.json and it will install all of the dependency files that are required to make this project run. And you can see that after this is finished running, there is in fact a node modules folder that was created, and those are all the dependency files that are needed. Looks like there's Chalk Animation and Chalk, so everything that was needed to run this project should have been included in the npm install. So now if I run node injects again, I have this very creative little assignment that was turned in, which was utilizing the Chalk Animation library. So you can see down at the bottom that that's what's in fact happening. So that is why you want to make sure that you include a package.json in your file, which we did at the very beginning when we did npm space init. And when you pass your files around, or where you share it with your team or upload it to GitHub, that we're certainly going to make sure that our node modules folder is not included. And how do we do that? Well, let me show you. So if this were my project, which it isn't, I borrowed it from a student submission. First of all, let's see, Control C, let's get out of this. I want to prepare this file for an upload into GitHub. And when I upload it into GitHub, I certainly don't want to include these node modules files. It's not necessary because we just saw that I can, as long as the package.json gets uploaded into GitHub, if another team member were to download my or clone my project or what have you, then all they need to do is run the npm install in order to get the dependencies. So that is a pretty cumbersome file that we certainly don't need to upload or push to GitHub. And so how can we go about avoiding that? Well, that's what that gitIgnore file does. So if we type in gitIgnore, and what we're doing in gitIgnore is exactly that. Git, please ignore the following folders and or files. So I'm going to give it I'm going to put a slash for node modules just to indicate that it is a folder. Node modules, and probably spell it right and save it. So now the idea is that we should be able to we should now be able to initialize this, and Git should be ignoring node modules. Let's see. So I'm going to do git init because this hasn't been initialized yet. And you can see that this is a GUI version of Git. You can see that Visual Studio Code is jumping on board and says, I get it. I also know what you're doing. And so we did it in the command line because I think it's good to know the brass roots kind of thing. But it looks like, what is this? Visual Studio is also playing. But notice U for unstaged. So these are files that we didn't put on, we didn't do that intermediate staging them and doing the git add yet. So they're waiting for us. But if we do a git status, and I'm going to do a git status down here because we can still use the command line, you can see that our node modules file folder was not included in Git's watchful eye. Git is in fact ignoring it. And so now you can you can do your git add from here like we did in the class, or if you want to use the GUI interface, we can do it from here. And so U for untracked files. And so this gives us a nice little visual of what's being changed. What is it tracking? And this is our initial commit, so we don't have anything from the beginning, and here's all the things that we added. And so we can look at our choices here, and we can commit all. Well, we haven't done any of the intermediate. We haven't done the add yet, right? We haven't done the staging, so we could stage all changes. But Visual Studio Code is kind of cool in that it sort of shortcuts this for us, and it says there are no staged changes to commit. Would you like to automatically stage them? And I'm just going to say yes. So it's going to do the add and the commit at the same time. And so here is my message up here. So what is the message? Well, this is my initial commit. And so now it's tracking that I have no changes. If I do a git status, everything should look clean, and I should have one commit now. Remember this from when we did it in the command line. I can do a git log, and I can see that I have not set my author name or my email address, but at the same time, you can certainly see that I have one commit, and it's showing up here. So at this point, if I had a GitHub repository set up, which I do not, and I can verify that if I say git remote-v, it's blank, so I would need to go into GitHub and get a link to a remote repository that I've set up. And then when I did a git push, everything would be pushed over, go back to my project, except for the node modules folders. So that's the purpose of package.json and how we can avoid large pushes of our node modules file. I was going to end the video there, but then it kind of occurred to me that I should probably finish this out and go ahead and get it uploaded to GitHub for a demonstration. So let's do that. So we need to somehow create a scenario where we're going to have this under Git's watchful eye. So we're going to need to initialize this directory as a Git repository, a local Git repository, and then we're going to create a remote repository in GitHub so we can push these files up without including node modules. So let's get on that. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a .gitignore file, and that is exactly the purpose for Git to ignore whatever is inside of these files or folders. In this file, gitignore, ignore, git, please, everything that's in here. In other words, we're going to ask it to ignore. In other words, don't pay attention to anything that happens in the node modules folder. We'll indicate that that's a folder this way. And so now we're saying git anything that's in here, just ignore. Don't include that when we do git add or git commit or git push. Just leave this module, this folder alone. So that kind of makes sense. All right, so we could go in here and do the command line like we learned before. But it turns out that Visual Studio Code has a GUI interface to help us with our Git software. So in other words, you can see this little icon is lit up and it says source control. It's asking me, show this current folder, shall we go ahead and initialize a repository? And I'm going to say, yeah, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so it did. Looks like I'm missing my node modules folder. So, oh, I know why. Because we're in source control, Git, and it is in fact ignoring my node modules folder. So in my project listing, there's my node modules. You can see it's being ignored, and you can see all of these files are green because Git is recognizing that they are new files and they are untracked. That's what the U stands for. So that's correct. Let's just go back to Git Status, back to the old way, and verify what we did the other day is still valid. It's just this is a GUI version of that. All right, so if you wanted to, we could also do all of what we did before. We've done a commit. We've also done, we've staged, so we could stage all changes and commit. It turns out that we can use a shortcut here, commit all, or you can just use this check mark, but I'm going to use commit all, and it's letting us know you didn't stage any, you didn't do that git add that we did, git add asterisk. Do you want me to do both? And I'm like, yes, I do. So here's your message So our message is going to be initial commit, and I'll go ahead and commit those changes. Now you can see that in my source control tab, everything is clear because I've just committed everything. And so I can do a Git Status just so we have a basis point from what we did the other day. Everything's clean. Git log, so we should have one commit, so that looks good. All right, so now we need to push to a repository. So let's see. I need to create a new repository. I'm going to call this Chalk Practice, and I'm going to keep it public. I don't need to initialize the repository. I did not make a README file, so I'm going to have to do that, but I'm going to handle that step separately. It's kind of a side step to where I was thinking I was going to be. Remember the gitIgnore, so this is where you could add a gitIgnore file, which is doing exactly what we just did. We are saying don't upload the node modules folder, just Git needs to ignore that. So I'm just going to leave it blank because we already created one. And then create the repository. All right, so here is where we can add our remote. So I'm going to pull this aside just so I have it. I do believe, haven't done it this way, but I am sure that somewhere in here we can push to, so it probably will say no remote has been set up. So I'm sure there's another way to do it, but I know that if I go into the command palette and I type in git and I start to see there is an add remote, so that seems like something I want to do. My remote name, please provide a remote name. I'm just going to put in, the URL. I think I'm kind of winging it here. I think this is asking for the origin and the URL. There we go. And then I need to put in just the origin. That's where I got that. That's what we normally call, standard to call the remote repository, and the URL. Okay, so it seems to be hooking that up. There was a little line going across here, which has now disappeared. So now let's see if I can push. So if I push, the branch masters know, would you like to publish this? Yes. So again, there's a little line going across here, and it's still going across. So I assume that it is pushing. Would I like to periodically run git fetch? No. And so it went away. So my little line stopped. I'm going to go into, didn't get any fanfare or anything, but I'm going to go in here and now see if that did in fact get pushed. And so now you see that it's here. I do need to create a README file, but that is another topic we've done already. But anyway, so here's the file. You notice that the node modules isn't in here, which is good. I have my package JSON, so if I pulled this down someplace else, or a team member pulled it down, or I submitted this as an assignment, I don't have to put up all those extra files and in the node modules folders. Whew, tongue-tied. Anyway, hope this made sense, and now we have successfully pushed our Chalk practice to GitHub.